Hey, Pearson.
Hey, Calvin.
Pearson, did you know that WNURsports.com does more than just article writing?
It does? Please tell me more.
WNURsports.com also has a radio station.
Man, it's almost like people are listening to it right now.
That's right. And on Sundays from 7 to 9 p.m., you can tune in to WNUR Sports to hear our station members give you 3 electrifying shows right here on the Sports Block.
Only on 89.3.
And on YouTube, second time back on YouTube for On the Clock with Charlie Jacobs. And this is episode 7. Today's going to be a little bit different. We're not talking any NFL on this podcast. On this show, it's going to be all basketball because there's been a lot going on in the NBA and also in terms of NBA draft. And with that, I have 2 guests on, not just one. Matt Campbell is back. Also, Tomas Moran. Thank you guys for being on. Tomas, your first time on.
Yes.
Good to have you here.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I think we just dive right into it. I know both of you are fans of teams in the NBA that had a chance in the lottery to jump up. I know, Tomas, you feel very passionate about this, and we'll get to that soon. But just let's talk some lottery reactions. I want to hear from Matt. I want to let you go first because I know Tomas is about to ramble on about something with the Mavericks. So, Matt, why don't you tell me what you thought of the lottery and what do you think the implications are?
My hatred for Nico Harrison has become exponentially greater because how do you trade a top 5 player in the league and get rewarded with the first overall pick when you have less than 2% odds to get the pick? And I'm angry as a Nets fan because the Nets had a top 5, top 6% chance to get the number 1 overall pick. But here we are. Nico Harrison gets rewarded with one of the worst trades in NBA history, was the number 1 pick served on a silver platter. So now we're going to have Cooper Flag paired with Kyrie Irving. And
Oh, don't forget about Anthony Davis.
you know what? You're here, bro, because I'm gonna lose my mind.
This is about to be better.
It is unbelievable. I mean, like, how is it possible, right, that you perhaps, pull off one of the worst trades, maybe, time will tell, in NBA history, and as Matt said, you get rewarded for it, and now everyone's like, oh, like Nico Harrison, he knew what he was doing, right? Now, I'm not going to say the lottery is rigged. I'm not going to call the integrity of the lottery into question. I just think it is incredibly cruel from the basketball gods, and specifically as someone from the Chicago area, someone who's followed the Chicago Bulls all their lives, it is heartbreaking that we lost that pick on a coin flip because the Bulls and the Mavericks had the same record, and so the Mavericks, they got to jump up to 11 on the coin flip that they won, and then with a 1.8% chance, they end up getting that number 1 overall pick. I mean, it's really just unbelievable. It is going to be unfair, right? I mean, you have Cooper Flag joining this incredibly talented Dallas Mavericks team, and just like that, the Mavericks all of a sudden don't need Luka, which is a crazy thing to say. And yeah, I mean, for the Bulls, it's just unbelievably bad luck, I guess you could just call it. There's nothing really else to say. I will add to for both Utah and Washington, brutal. The 2 worst teams in the NBA record-wise, and Utah ends up with the 5th pick. The Wizards end up with the 6th pick, so that's pretty bad for them. And what really sucks, at least, for someone who's so passionate about the Chicago Bulls, if Josh Giddey never made that half-court buzzer-beating shot against the Lakers, remember, to win that game, if he had missed that, the Bulls would have had a worse record than the Mavericks, and the Bulls would have the number 1 pick in the NBA draft, which is just...
The thing about the Bulls is that, and the Mavericks, they were both in the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
The Mavericks were in the play-in tournament, didn't really need to play hard all season. I mean, they played hard all season. There was moments after they traded Luka, they were still considered a possible championship contender because you still had Kyrie and AD. And all of a sudden, Kyrie goes down, torn ACL. It may never actually.
The script is just like absolute, has conferences been in recent years, but the fact they're in the top 4 doesn't make a difference. Like, they're still gonna get somebody that is gonna just bolster their team in ways that like we didn't imagine coming into this.
And I love how none of us even really talked about how the Spurs.
Oh yes,
just got into pick number 2. Like, it's nothing that could be a trade piece. That could be something else. Who knows really? But it's just this team, the Spurs. They are built for a championship now. If they draft one, if they trade for someone, and that kind of takes us up into the next.
in
our next segment.
Do you remember? I'll make this quick, but do you remember when I joked to you about Victor Wembanyama and Cooper Flag being on the same team. I'm not gonna lie, like that was running through my head once we got past like pick number 10. I'm like, yeah, no way, right? And then like I'm following the lottery, right?
Then the Mavs
And
jump
then
up.
and then the Jazz get number 5, and I start to sweat. And then once the Hornets got number 4, I really started to tweak. And once the Sixers got the number 3 pick, I almost had an anxiety attack.
I was so
I
happy
was like
Philly didn't
bug
get
it
three,
out.
though.
And then the
didn't get
Spurs,
one.
I was like bugging out because either team that gets the number 1 pick, I was just gonna be angry at. And I was just like, you know what? At this point, give Nico Harrison the number 1 pick
But
because
again, he's not in the East. Flag is not in the East.
This is true.
Flag is on the East.
Unless there's a trade,
Which
which is
I
not
mean,
happening.
if
But
he ended up in the East, he would have been in top. He would have been a top 5 in MVP conversations by year number 3. 'Cause
Also,
that's how
like,
weak the
speaking
have
East
him, like, on
is.
the Wizards or have like
yeah, who knows?
Right.
But also, he may not have wanted to play there.
That's
Anyways, speaking of trades,
yes.
that'll take us into our next segment, and we're gonna do some trade talk because obviously one of the biggest names in the history of the NBA, at least in this century, in the
Yes.
20th century, is on the trade block right now, and it's one of the first times, maybe even the first time, where an international player is actually asking out. We don't really see this a lot. It's always been James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, just all these Americans saying, I want to go this place, this place, this place, and the trade gets done. It's never really happened with a foreign player. I mean, Luka Doncic was traded, but
But he didn't want to get traded.
kind of, I guess, out of spite from Nico Harrison. There's still a lot to be uncovered there. But, I mean, Jimmy Butler asking out, another example of an American. And, like, now there's a foreigner, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak, the
Yes.
Greek god of him. He's fantastic to watch. He was destroying in the playoffs despite the Pacers really playing well. And Giannis is probably not going to be a Milwaukee Buck next season, and he might still. But do you guys think that if he were to be traded, or any other players would be traded, do you think it would take any of these top draft picks? And which teams do you think would bite?
Well, I do think, I'll put this out there first. I think Giannis will still be a Milwaukee Buck come October. I would like to put this out here. So, first of all, I don't think he's going to the Bulls. I know there's a lot of smoke about that. There's like no way. He's not going to Chicago. I think San Antonio, and I'll give credit where credit is due. I found this on CBS Sports. It's an article by Adam Finkelstein, and I think it's really interesting. So he proposes. So, both of you can give your thoughts on this. So the Bucks this is a trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo between the Bucks, the Spurs, and then we had the Pelicans to make it work. So the Bucks would get Stephon Castle, Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, the 2025 number 2 overall pick, and the most favorable pick between Milwaukee or New Orleans, first rounder in 2026. So they get two first rounders, including the number 2 pick, and then they get Castle, Barnes, and Johnson to make the contracts work. But at the same time, I do think Stephon Castle is a really, really good young prospect.
He won the Rookie of the Year. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Yeah, Rookie of the Year. And then the Pelicans would get the number 14 pick, which is the Spurs' number 14 pick, and Atlanta's unprotected 2027 first rounder. So the Pelicans get 2 first rounders out of this. And then they're giving up potentially their 2026. And then the Spurs just get Giannis, which of course is, Hall of Famer, like I would say top 5 player in the league over the past decade. So
3.
top 3 easily. Especially I would say in the 2020s so far, yes, top 3. Who says no to this? What do you think? I'm curious.
I don't.
I mean, as a Knicks fan, I'm going to say no to basically every trade proposal I see, because I'm sure you guys always see the Knicks are done dirty on these trade proposals. I mean, it's terrible. But there's obviously you have a Giannis trade, but there's other players who might be gone. Like John Morant could get traded. Austin Reeves, there's rumblings he gets traded.
No,
There's-
okay, no shot that John Morant gets traded.
Why?
Let's shoot this down now. I don't care. John Morant is a generational centerpiece of a franchise. You just don't give that away.
What about Zion?
Zion too? You don't give him away.
Zion might get traded.
I think Zion might get
I think
traded,
Zion.
and I feel like him being the representative at the lottery may say something. But also, actually, just doubling back to the lottery, something I forgot to say is that I'm sure you guys saw this, that after I believe it was the Hornets got bought by a new team, by a new owner, they got the number 1 pick, they got Anthony Davis. When LeBron left Cleveland, the Cleveland Cavaliers got the number 1 pick, got Kyrie Irving. When LeBron came back, they got the number 1 pick, they got Andrew Wiggins. Like, it's a lot of weird things with the lottery, and it's probably just coincidence, but still want to throw that out here.
Okay, but that's hit or miss.
That's hit or
Like you
miss.
mentioned Kyrie Irving and Andrew Wiggins in the same breath, and they are not the same
I never
player.
said they were the
Hello,
same
no
player.
offense to the Bulls fan, but they are not the same player.
Andrew Wiggins was the second best player on a Warriors team that won a title, which is kind of insane to
Yes,
say.
but
Um,
Kyrie Irving was like the best player in the league for a short period of time.
Any other
In the
player,
league, I would say.
any other players you think
For
would
a
be
short period
traded
of time,
for
like a 2-month time frame, yes, he was the
Okay,
best
but you
player
could
in the
say the
league.
same about
I think there's also a trade chance Philly trades their pick. I'm not sure for who though.
I mean,
Right now, you look at it. What does Philly need? You could try to do something
A
with
healthy
Miami. You
big
could try
man.
to get Bam.
A healthy big man.
I mean, a healthy big man. But trade speculation is one of the most fun things to do. It's so much fun, especially when it's not your teams involved and you just get to mess around with the NBA trade machine. Like I was doing it right now. I'm doing Giannis to the Spurs. I'm thinking there could be something with a De'Aaron Fox plus. Because Fox right now, I mean, you have Castle, and if you get Giannis, Wembanyama, Castle, Vassell, all can bring the ball up. You don't. I mean, yes, Fox is a great fit there.
So if you're trading Fox away, are you trading then Fox and the number 2 pick? I would assume.
Yes, but then that would maybe be all. Plus, depending on how contracts work, there's even a chance that you might have that because I think the Bucks also might want to get rid of Dame if they get rid of Giannis because of his contract and because of the Achilles tear.
That's true.
So I think
Very
getting
true.
rid of both of those at the same time might be really hard to do, and it would probably require a third or maybe even a fourth team. But still, it's just this draft class is one of the most loaded draft classes we've seen in recent history. Cooper Flag is one of the best number 1 overall prospects we've maybe ever seen. I'm not comparing him to Wembanyama. I'm not comparing him to LeBron, but he might be third. He might be third behind what Zion. He might be third or fourth, similar to how when Zion came out of college, he was considered the next best thing. Cooper Flag had maybe a better freshman season than Zion Williamson, and Zion was touted as the best college player we've ever seen in a single season.
Well, and with Zion, it's also just the injuries have just decimated his
he's
career
actually
so far.
played more games than LaMelo Ball, or something like. There's some crazy stuff where Zion has played more games than I think LaMelo Ball over the past 3 seasons, and nobody thinks about it. But I don't know.
That.
No, I mean obviously
LaMelo's
but-
also he's also.
But I think there's a chance. What if I'm the Spurs and I say, I want Zion. I'll give you the number 2 pick straight up, and we'll dump contracts.
I don't think the Spurs.
I don't think they would do that. I think Philly might do that. I think Philly would maybe take would take Zion, and if they could get rid of Paul George, but I don't know. Anyways, let's move on to this final segment, which we're going to go over for the last 12 minutes of the show, so to say. And we're going to talk about some of the top picks in this draft, the top prospects, because this draft class, as I said, is loaded. The number 1 player, I think we should all just get our thoughts out now before we move on to talking about everyone else, because it's one of the more consensus number 1 picks.
Wait.
Last year was not.
Wait, number 1 pick. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Cooper Flag.
Boo booey.
Okay. I thought we were
Cooper
saying
Flag.
it all at
Yes,
the
it
same
is Cooper
time, but
Flag.
okay. All right.
Yeah. Flag is just insane. He missed that shot in the Final Four.
but there's no question about it. He's the number.
Hello.
I mean, he's going to Dallas. He
He's
goes
the
to a
number 1
real franchise, I guess, and it's just crazy to think that in the WNBA, the Dallas Wings had the first overall pick, and now the Dallas Mavericks are going to take Cooper Flag. It's going to. I mean, Mavs fans, they were probably bought out after that Nico Harrison trade, right? And with now them getting the number 1 pick, some of them may be like, "Oh, I'm still not buying in. I still don't trust this guy." But then it'll be halfway through the season. The Mavs are like 6th or 5th or 6th in the West. Cooper Flag is putting up 20, 10, and 5 a game or something like that. And all the Mavs fans are like, you know what? I'll buy back in because while Luka Doncic is fantastic and might be, you could make an argument he's a top 5 player in the league. Maybe not after these playoffs.
No, I think
he's still top 5.
I think he still is. I would say that.
Give it a full season.
If this wasn't a draft show, I'd pose the question: Jalen Brunson or Luka Doncic. But that's for another time because it actually is a better question now.
Now I would say it is a better question.
Anyways, other than Cooper Flag, so Dylan Harper's probably going number 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we've seen him in the Big Ten. We have seen him play at Northwestern.
Correct.
I mean, he wasn't playing. We saw Ace Bailey play. But what do you guys
Dunked
think
on
of
Nick
Dylan Harper?
Mornelli.
What do you guys think of Dylan Harper? And do you think he's a surefire number 2 overall pick, or do you think there's any way the Spurs or whoever else is there does something different?
Ace Bailey's not going number 2. We could rule that out already.
What about VJ Edgecombe?
VJ Edgecombe, I don't know. I can't say that. I don't think he's a better guard than Dylan Harper. I can't really say that, Can you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. It has to be Dylan Harper. I know Rutgers, they weren't very good, and it's kind of insane that they had two like top 5 picks and they couldn't really make a dent in the Big Ten. But Dylan Harper, first of all, he's at 6'6", so he's a pretty tall guard.
Yeah.
He averaged 19, 4, and 4, shooting 48% from the field for this Rutgers team, 33% from three, which isn't amazing, but it's also not that bad. Just overall, I think he's a very, very versatile player. He had some injuries in this past season, but
So
I don't
did
think it's
Baylor.
not a big concern. I think I don't see a world in which the Spurs or potentially whoever has the number 2 pick don't take Dylan Harper.
I mean, another thing about Harper too is that Matt, I brought up VJ Edgecombe because Edgecombe, I know a lot of times. I mean, you look at 2020 draft when Anthony Edwards went 1, and the Warriors took James Wiseman at 2 over LaMelo Ball, and also the Warriors said they would have taken Wiseman at 1 if they had gotten that number 1 pick over Anthony Edwards, and obviously that just bit them back really hard as they lost that series just now. But anyways, still, like the Warriors at that time, I could understand them taking Wiseman because they were trying to. I mean, yes, you always should draft best player available, but they were drafting for need there. And in this draft, when Harper is, I would say, like the consensus second best player in this draft. But when you have Edgecombe, who fits the Spurs so well, it is definitely an argument. And the Spurs are one of those teams that always seem to have their own big board. I mean, the only time it feels like they don't is when they have the number 1 overall pick, when they take who should be going number 1 overall. But there's always a case there for Edgecombe. But then you move on to 3 through 6, 7, 8. It's where it gets a little bit weird because for a while it has been Ace Bailey number 3, Ace Bailey number 3. But I don't know for sure if Ace Bailey will be going number 3.
Ace Bailey will be going number 3. But guys, come on, let's be real. This guy's a freak athlete. Okay. After he came to Northwestern and dropped 40, I was like, this guy should go number 2. Obviously,
37, but yeah.
That was
40,
his best game of the
37,
season,
same
though.
thing.
That was his best game of the season.
Yes.
And insane, and
Also know
that lob on Nick Martinelli's head lives rent free in my head.
No
every
Harper, though, just
single
remember that.
day. No Harper though, but he's still okay. My Coke bottle's like making weird noises.
Your Coke bottle
What's
wants to
going
get a
on?
word in.
Okay, but like, still,
passionate.
if there was any game that can like that you can use as what's the word I'm looking for? Like-
Example? I don't know.
Like an example of
Just
who
fuel to add
Ace
into it.
Bailey is as a player, just like a microcosm. There we go, like a microcosm of who he is as a player. Like, I think that's it.
It's a big
So-
word even for me.
Ace Bailey number 3 pick for me. VJ Edgecombe did have a very good game against Duke, 16 points, shooting 50% from the field, but I don't think that's enough to say, yo, like he's a better performer than Ace Bailey. He's a better hooper than Ace Bailey because Ace Bailey did not show up in March Madness, and if you were to dump him in there, I feel like he would perform against this national competition because he's just that good,
Well, and yeah, I mean, again, like we saw him here in Evanston and he dropped 37. I know, Charlie, it's just one game and that was his best game of the year. But at the same time, I mean, Ace Bailey at his peak, I think Ace Bailey has a higher ceiling than VJ Edgecombe. I think he has a higher ceiling than Trey Johnson or Con Kneppel. I think Ace Bailey could potentially be like an all-star, all-NBA guy in this league. I'm not saying he will be. I'd say he has the potential to be. And you do see, of course, draft prospects flop and all that. But when you talk about, drafting for utility versus drafting the best player available, I think if you are in that top lottery, right? Like I'm talking like top 5, especially top 3 picks, I strongly believe that you should always, always, always draft the best player available. Look at what happened, as we mentioned, to the Warriors with Wiseman, right? Like I think no matter what, even if you have depth in that position, it would be foolish to not draft the best player available. And I mean, Ace Bailey at 6'10", but he's incredibly mobile. He's a great shooter. Just overall, I mean, 34% from 3, 46% from the field, 17.6 points, over 1 block, 7 rebounds,
He's like
a steal. Like,
this is like the blueprint of a stretch 4.
Yeah.
It's like a Carl Anthony, like a modern version of who Carl Anthony Towns was a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
When I think of Bailey, I think more of just Michael Porter Jr. because they're very similar build. And
Yeah.
Ace Bailey at Rutgers was listed as 6'10", 6'11", whatever. He measured at the combine without shoes 6'7" and a half. So I mean, there was expectations that his height was going to over reported while he was at Rutgers, but still, Rutgers does have him listed at 6'10". Another thing, he was in an interview. He was asked about making tough shots and his confidence. He said, "What might be a bad shot to you, you don't work on it. I work on it," which I feel like, yes, you may look at that as a good thing, but also, like, are you not working on shots that should be routine? Are you not working on
I think
taking
he
the open three?
does.
I mean, obviously,
does.
yes, but hearing that, I mean, yes, this guy's confident, but at the same time, I don't know. Like Matt said, and like you said, Tomas, he does have a very high ceiling, but his floor is
It
very
could,
low.
yes.
His floor is out of the league in 3 years, maybe. Like,
Potentially.
I
But you can say
do.
that about a lot of these guys.
I mean, yes, you can, obviously, but I think that VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson skyrocketed their stocks at the combine. And you usually don't always talk about the NBA draft combine in terms of
Right.
skyrocketing stocks, but this year just something feels different, especially because of who's picking in the top 3, because these teams are already established and just had bad years with injuries. Or, I mean, Victor Wembanyama for the Spurs, I know we already talked about Dylan Harper, was going to win Defensive Player of the Year probably unanimously. He was having that good of a year on defense, and they get the number 2 pick. You have the Sixers, who Jared McCain went down early, was looking like he was going to win Rookie of the Year. Paul George had a down year and was hurt. Embiid was hurt all year. Maxey was a little bit banged up. So you have teams that have competed for championships or have championship aspirations that are drafting at the top of this draft, who might actually draft for fit, and not even just for fit, and just might draft like Trey Johnson, who I think there's a really good chance Trey Johnson goes 3. He had that good of a combine. He's a great shooter. That's what the Sixers need. They need shooting. If they don't trade it, then that's what they need, because I don't know if Ace Bailey is what they need, because he might just be a raw version of Paul George. At the same time,
But a much younger version.
yes, obviously a much younger version and doesn't have all the miles on him. But still, I think really just looking at the rest of this, like, there's a chance. I think from 3 to about 7, there's about 4 or 5 players that I could see kind of going in that range. I'm not sure the order. Maybe even a couple more players that could fall in there. You mentioned Conca Nipple, who had an awesome tournament. Maybe the best pure shooter in this draft, just a knockdown 3-point shooter. And he's a big guard. He's who you want to be taking catch and shoot threes or even off the dribble threes. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Klay Thompson, and just the way he moves, he's really athletic. He doesn't look to be as athletic as he is, and we saw that in the tournament. Also, Kaman Malowach, if any team needs a center, he is going off the board. And there was a real case, if Duke didn't lose that game and Duke ended up winning the national championship, that he would have won the Final Four most valuable player over Cooper Flagg, because he was just that impactful on the defensive end. This guy's 7'2". This guy is enormous. And also, just moving on, you have we talked about Edgecombe, we talked about Trey Johnson, but also Jeremiah Fears you have to throw his name in the mix because he's been mocked up there with the rest of them.
I want to throw this out there because the Wizards do need a big. Derek Queen going 6, which is like very dicey, and it's a very very hot take. But it's not out of the question, you know. And I mean, the Sixers, like, they kind of have needs everywhere except for point guard, you know, Jordan Poole. But Derek Queen and Jordan Poole in Washington, I think that's something that needs to be thought about at least a little bit.
I think if they were to take a center, they'd probably take Malowach, because Derek Queen is just more like a power forward type thing. You have that in Alex Sarr, who you took first overall or second overall last season. So I think there's that as well. But also, just talking about Queen, I think Queen is more like a Zach Randolph type guy. He's a bigger guy, and there are going to be some concerns with rebounding in the NBA. So you have that to say. I think he probably I still think there's a chance he's a lottery pick, but if he falls out of the lottery and is picked at like 15, 16, I wouldn't be completely surprised.
No, but I think the Wizards would do well with a smaller lineup, because that's kind of like most of their successes have come from guard production, i.e. John Wall, of course, like 10 years ago. But I think the Sixers. I think the Wizards would be best if they just go with like 2 power forwards and small guys and just run the floor.
But before kicking up to Tomas, also want to throw out there Kasparis Jonas on Illinois. He could always go up there. He's a great shooter. Tomas, you have the floor.
He'll likely be a top 10 pick. But just last thing real quick. Personally, looking at the Bulls, I think Derek Queen or Malowach. But personally, I would like Queen better. If Queen falls to 12, I think that would be a great pick for the Bulls, especially considering, and you have an aging Vucevic on an expiring contract. You need a big. I think Derek Queen would be a great young big to add to that, young core.
I could get behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's all we have time for here on the clock. Thank you too for coming on, Tomas. It was great to have you for the first time. I
Thank
knew
you,
I knew
Charlie.
you'd be passionate about your Bulls,
Yes.
and I knew
yes.
I really wanted to bring up that coin flip, whether to irk you or just hear your thoughts. And
Yeah,
Matt, it's
that
always great
coin.
to have you on. Thank you guys for joining, and we will be back next week for more on